Have you ever had one of those moments where you see something for the very first time and it contradicts everything you've always thought up to that point, and it just rocks your world? Well, that happened to me on several occasions as I was studying the Word. And then suddenly it's like this light comes on and focuses on a point that I'd glossed over for my entire life. That's what happened to me with the parable of the wheat and the tares. One day it just hit me. What Jesus said in Matthew chapter 13, verse 30. Allow both to grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I'll say to the reapers, first, gather up the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them up, but gather the wheat into my barn. Now, I'd always heard that this harvest was the rapture. But wait a minute. Jesus says it's the tares that get gathered up first. Just the opposite of what I'd always heard and believed. But there it was in red letters right in my Bible. Now, if that were the only place in the Bible, you might could excuse the oversight. But there are multiple places that it says the same thing. And if that's the case, then something else is going on. If you drop down to verse 47 of Matthew chapter 13, we have another parable told by Jesus concerning the kingdom of heaven. Now here's what he says, verse 47. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet cast into the sea and gathering fish of every kind. And when it was filled, they drew it up on the beach, and they sat down and gathered the good fish into containers, but the bad they threw away. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come forth, now look at it, and take out the wicked from among the righteous, and will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. It is the wicked being taken out from among the righteous. But I thought it was the righteous that were taken out from among the wicked. So here it appears in red letters for the second time. But there's more. In the Olivet Discourse, which we're going to spend some time on in the weeks ahead, Jesus is giving his warning concerning the judgment that was going to come upon Jerusalem and the temple. Now let's just look at one portion of it, beginning in Matthew 24, verse 37, and a few verses following. Verse 37. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. So here it is again. A passage that is used to describe the rapture at some point in our future. But Houston, we have a problem. It's not the righteous who are being taken out. It's the wicked. And specifically, it's speaking of the judgment that was coming on the apostate first century Jews who killed Jesus, who killed the apostles, and who viciously persecuted the first century followers of Jesus. Now, at this point, we have to resolve that we're either going to investigate further what the scriptures actually say, or we do what the first century Jews did, and we close our eyes to the truth because our definition of the kingdom is different than God's definition of the kingdom. Now, just as Jesus did with the parable of the sower of the seed, he does with the parable of the wheat and the tares. He leaves the crowds, and while he's alone with his disciples, he explains the meaning of the parable to them. We pick it up in Matthew chapter 13, verse 36. He left the crowds and went into the house, and his disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the tares of the field." And he said, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man." Now, remember, Son of Man is a phrase that was used of the promised Messiah. Verse 38, and the field is the world. Now, the world could be the Jewish world and not necessarily the whole planet. And as for the good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom, and the tares are the sons of the evil one. Now, the sons of the kingdom are the righteous remnant of Israel, and the sons of the evil one are the apostate first century Jews. And we'll come back and look at this in more detail in a moment. Verse 39, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil, and the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Now the word age is the Greek word aeon, A-I-O-N. The Jews believed there were two ages. The present age that they were living in, the age of the Mosaic covenant, and the age to come, which was the promised Messianic kingdom. So the present age and the age to come. The present age being the age of the Mosaic covenant, the age to come being the age of the Messianic kingdom. The reapers are angels or messengers. Now, these could be angelic messengers, but it could be just physical messengers. Throughout the Old Testament, when God came in judgment, he did so through foreign pagan invading armies like the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians. And here he's speaking specifically of what's going to take place in the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple, and he's going to do it through his messengers, the Romans. Verse 40, we pick it up. So just as the tares are gathered up and burned with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send forth his angels, his messengers, and they will gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who commit lawlessness, and will throw them into the furnace of fire, and in that place there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. Now, I said I'd come back and we would look at the sons of the kingdom and the sons of the evil one from verse 38. To gain insight into this verse, we need to look at the Gospel of John. In John chapter 1, verses 11 through 13, John said the following in speaking of Jesus. Verse 11, he came to his own, but those who were his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, even to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but born of God. Now, in this passage, we're introduced to the idea that bloodline does not equal relationship with God. Those who were the blood descendants of Abraham, for the most part, did not recognize him and did not receive Jesus as their promised Messiah. But as many as did, they had the right to become children or sons of God. Now, I can't emphasize this point enough. The presence of Messiah was the end of the Judaistic system. It was the end of the temple system. It was the end of physical bloodline having any bearing on standing before God. This is why the first century Jewish leadership hated Jesus and had him killed. It's why the Jewish followers of Jesus were hated and persecuted by the Jewish rejectors of Jesus. And we're going to come back in our next study this coming Monday morning as we complete the study of the parable of the wheat and the tares and look further into what Jesus had to say about the kingdom. Now, why not click on the subscribe button in the lower right corner of your screen, and you'll be notified in YouTube whenever a new video gets posted. And if you're watching on Facebook, consider sharing this on your wall and invite your friends to watch it with you. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you'll go out and make today a great day and have a safe weekend. I'll see you Monday morning.